if you can understand or appreciate generations above you, then it kind of helps explain to you why you are the way you are. The way you think, the way you have a flair for something or your interest in something, it's going to come from somewhere. I do think that there's something in the genes that makes you think a certain way. Once I graduated, I had this serious desire to make a full feature-length film. I was in a very unique position because I was surrounded by graduates who were all so keen to do things, and it was kind of like, this is the time to do this. I may never get the opportunity to do this again. Let's do it. I went over to my father's house and I said, look, I've got this idea, started rattling it off. I was really passionate and excited. And he basically said, I don't really like the idea. We sort of paced up and down actually in this room, and I just suddenly threw it at him and I said, well, what about my dad, your grandfather's record of being at Dunkirk, World War II? And there was this long pause, and he said, you know what, I think that's a great idea. I've always been interested in the Second World War, probably because of my grandfather. My dad's quite passionate about history, so it's always been a theme running through the family. I knew bits and pieces. I'd heard lots of sort of little stories about what he'd done and what he'd got up to. So I had an understanding, but nowhere near what I understood after I'd started researching it. I laid the ground initially because I was the only person that had a one-to-one to father, dad.
I have to tell you now that no such undertaking has been received, and that consequently this country is at war with Germany.
I got sent my grandfather's battalion's war diaries, which stipulated what was going on at exactly what time, day, and I started to get an understanding of where they were, and that sort of tied up very nicely with what my grandfather had said to my father, and I was able to piece together a journey, and I actually managed to mark out a line, which was incredible to see, because when you see it on a map and you see the distances that they travelled, it's pretty sobering. My dad was a driving force behind the film, and in a strange sort of way, he almost became a bit of a father figure to the whole production team. Everybody would sort of look to him and they'd go to him, and my dad's he's a funny guy. You know, if things are stressful, he'll say something ridiculous that's incredibly embarrassing, but everybody sort of enjoys it and they get along with him really well. And, you know, he has so much understanding of the Second World War. He was so excited to hear about what I had been researching. Quite often it would fire off like memories. So I'd say something and it would trigger something, and he'd say, you know, I remember him saying this. It was quite a nice bonding experience as well for me and him, because we were both learning about his father, my grandfather, and the two of us sort of learning that and appreciating that. But it kind of was very real for him. It did get to me a few times, but there were a few occasions on set where it got a little bit much for him. You know, he saw the lead actor, Gareth Osman, as his dad at times. You know, he'd sort of glance over and he'd catch sort of a side profile, and it'd sort of knock him back a bit. And there were a few occasions where he had to walk off set and just sort of gather his thoughts. It was kind of difficult to see, but at the same time it was quite rewarding in a way, because it meant we were doing something right. I went out to France last year, and we actually went to the woods where my grandfather was fighting Foray de Nieppe, which is shown quite heavily in the film. And we actually went to the very small graveyard where those guys are buried, and it was really difficult. It was wonderful to be there, but it was very real. You know, this isn't something that I've read on the internet. This is their gravestone. You know, these are the names. There's their age. They're 21. They're younger than me, and it was hard. And I walked into the woods on my own. And I just stood there, and there were craters, and the film was sort of playing in my head, and it was unreal. Really, it's almost not a war film, it's a survival film. I guess what I was trying to say was that the human element, you know, people keep going, whatever's happening, however bad things get, people have this strange determination to just keep going. That's what it boils down to. It's human on human. It's not good versus evil, it's survival.
Sir, we need to move. We're too open here.
Stay put. If we stay here, we die.
Trying to save your life, you nosy sod.
He should have been given what was called the Albert Medal by the Belgians for his involvement in the rearguard action. When I said to Father, well, you really need to sort of pursue this and obtain the medal, he was quite adamant. He says, oh, I'm too old to be bothered. And sadly, within sort of a 12-month period, my father passed away. And that was one of the first things that I felt I should do, is pursue this Albert Medal. So I wrote to the King. This is actually a letter from Private Secretary, and it says, the King has asked me to thank you for your moving account of the war record and courage of your father, Lance Corporal James Moles. And yeah, we managed to get the medal for Dad.
The film was put online for free 75 years to the weekend that my grandfather got away from Dunkirk. I'd kind of got it into my head that was the time to release it, because as the years rolled on through editing and things, it kind of seemed like it was meant to be.
I actually physically got upset at the end because I was so emotionally drawn in to the final showing of it, and I had to give a speech at the end, which I sort of kept fluffing because I felt so emotional. It was my dad on that screen, and it was so accurate as well.
I need some men to go back for the wounded. There's a lot of men back there that need our help. Well, come on. No one.
I guess I would like to think that he's proud of it, but I should imagine that once he'd finished watching it, he'd almost say that it shouldn't have been about him, it should have been about everybody, which is what I tried to do.
But yes, he would have been very humbled by watching the 90-minute film, and this is a question that we have often bandied around in the family. Maybe he did see it.